Hello everyone, welcome to another new session of Indian Contract Act 1872. We have been discussing one of the most essential elements of a valid contract, and that is free consent. In our last lecture, we have gone through two important criterias wherein if a consent is obtained by engaging into any one of these, it will be considered to not be a free consent and the contract will be declared to be a voidable contract or a voidable agreement. Last time we had seen coercion, wherein we said that it is forcing or compelling a party to enter into a contract, whereas when you talk about another element of no free consent is undue influence, wherein we said that one dominant party who has exercised or who is exercising an undue influence on another party and being submissive to that dominant party's influence, the other party enters into a contract. After we looked into these two important criteria, we said that the agreement becomes voidable and the contract becomes voidable, and the party whose consent has been so taken gets an opportunity or gets an option to avoid the contract. So if such party decides to avoid it and rescind the contract, meaning cancel the contract, the obligations and rights of both the parties come to an end. Whereas if the party decides that no, even though my consent was not a free consent, but I still want to go ahead with the contract, then in that case the contract becomes a valid contract and the rights and obligations of the parties continue to remain as it were as per the contract. Now today we will go ahead to look at the third essential of or the third criteria, wherein if a consent is taken by indulging into that criteria, the contract becomes a voidable contract, and that element is the element of fraud. Now we have heard about this word fraud n number of times, be it in commercial transactions, we have read it in many newspapers, or we have also used this word very frequently in our day-to-day lives, wherein we said that fraud has been committed. ओके, मग फसवणूक केली आहे त्या माणसाची, त्या माणसाला फसवलेलं आहे. So the word fraud in itself means that you are trying to deceive the other party. Deceive the other party means to defraud the other party, means that whatever you are doing is not correct, or whatever you are doing is not justified, is not legal, but still you go ahead and do it with an intention that the other party should be harmed. Then in that case we consider it to be fraud. Putting the same logic under the Indian Contract Act 1872, Section 17 of the Indian Contract Act has gone ahead to define fraud. That means has gone ahead to define as to when it will be considered to be fraud. So as per Section 17, it is said that fraud means and includes the activities which are committed by a party to a contract or by anyone with his connivance or by his agent with the intention to deceive another party thereto or his agent, or to induce him to enter into a contract. So under section 17 there are five categories that if a person has indulged into any of these five acts with an intention to deceive the other party and make the other party sign a contract, then it will be considered that the consent was obtained fraudulently, means by using an element of fraud. Let us go one by one to understand what are these instances. The first element of fraud is that the act of fraud must have been committed by a party to the contract or covenants or by his agent. Understand that when few people are acting as representatives of another people or as agent of another people, then in that case, even if they are committing fraud and entering into a contract or making the other party enter into a contract, the principal will be considered to be the liable person. Now to give you a small example, let's talk about an establishment of a company. Now company, as we all know, is an artificial entity, meaning it does not have its own eyes, ears, hands and legs or brain. It is run by the board of directors of the company, who are the company's representatives. They are the agents of the company. So tomorrow, if let's say one of the director from the board of director in his official capacity goes and tries and enters into a person's office and tells the person that we are a big five company, we have got $1 million turnover, we are having a lot of customers, high profile customers, we are having a good business, and we want to enter into a contract with you, and you will also be one of our esteemed customer. Now, if the other party, believing the director of the company, enters into a contract, then in that case, later on, if he finds out that the material facts which were shared with that person were fraudulent, were incorrect, were a lie, they were not correct, then the other party gets a right to avoid the contract. This is when the party himself know, but the representative of a company has tried to deceive the other party. So not necessary that it should be only one person, it can be a representative, it can be an agent, it can also be a governance. The second essential element, or one of the main element of fraud, is that it can be an active concealment of a fact with the knowledge of the fact. The word here, knowledge of the fact, is very important, because let's say for example, if I believe something to be true on my own, I actually believe that whatever I am saying is true, but the reality is altogether different, then I will not be considered to be a liar, I will not be considered to be a fraud person, because I myself believe it to be true. However, if I don't have knowledge of it, if I don't know about it, if I don't know about it, but still I go on telling about that fact, people will go on believing me. On the other hand, if I know that whatever I am saying is incorrect, is a lie, is untruth, but just to make the other person sign the contract, I am lying to that person, I am making a fraud to that person, then in that case it will be considered to be active concealment of the fact. So knowledge of the fact or belief of the fact is very crucial to prove when there is a proof, or when there is an evidence related to fraud which has to be submitted. So for example, it might be just a suggestion of a fact which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. That means a person is making a false statement while taking insurance policy. Let's say for example, generally the scenario arises in case of health insurance policies. If I want to take an insurance on my life, I have to disclose certain facts to the insurance company. So they generally ask you as to, do you have any illness, have you undergone any surgery, are you taking any medication. Let's say if I am taking a medication of I am a heart patient and I am taking medication on that, but I have not disclosed it to the insurance company at the time of taking my life insurance, and after taking insurance within 2 months itself I suffer a heart attack and I am hospitalized. Obviously the insurance company will, before giving me the insurance amount, will go on getting the history as to what exactly happened. Tomorrow, during that hospitalization, if the hospital reveals it to the insurance company, tells the insurance company that he or she was a heart patient and was undergoing treatment, but I have not disclosed this fact when I was taking my life insurance, when I was taking my medical insurance, then in that case it will be considered to be a fraud, because I had a knowledge that I am a heart patient, I am undergoing medical treatment, I am undergoing medication, but still with an intention to make the insurance company enter into a contract with me, I did not disclose that fact to that insurance company, I lied to that insurance company. Then in this case the insurance company has an option to whether go ahead and make the contract a valid contract and give me the insurance amount, or declare the contract to be void contract and not give me any insurance amount. Then in that case the aggrieved party, means the insurance party, gets an option to cancel the contract. This is one of the example wherein if you have revealed something, if you have committed fraud, you may not be entitled to the obligations which the other party was supposed to perform. The third one is that a promise which is made without any intention of performing it. The intention of a person not to perform a promise that is being made is necessary element of fraud. For example, let's say a person purchases goods on credit without an intention of paying for them. Then in that case we say that the person has committed a fraud. The fourth point is that any activity or any other act which is fitted to deceive. Fitted to deceive means खोटाडेपणाच्या बाबतीतलं किंवा एखाद्या व्यक्तीला फ्रॉड करण्याच्या बाबतीतलं. Likewise, it includes all acts which are not falling within any of the above activities, which provides that the acts aim at deceiving a person. And the last one is that any such act or omission which law specifically declares to be fraudulent. So for example, a secret agreement to purchase insolvent's property again will be considered to be a fraudulent activity, because an insolvent person cannot sell off his property because he is under the charge of the court and all his assets will be in the hands of the courts. But if he tries to secretly dispose of the property, then that will be considered to be a voidable contract. Likewise, the act of fraud must have been committed with the intention to deceive, and the person should have actually deceived by the other party. Meaning, if the person is just thinking in his mind that I want to enter into a contract with this person, but I cannot tell the person truth, so better I give him a lie, I commit a fraud and make that person enter into a contract. This is just going in my mind. Have I actually done it? No. Then nobody can take an action against me, because it is not that I have actually deceived a person, but I am just thinking it in my mind to do it. And thoughts are something which cannot be criminalized. And the person whose consent has been so taken should have suffered some sort of damages because of such entering into a contract. Now, let's say for example, I want to sell my house. Okay, let's take any movable property. Let's say I want to sell my car, and I know that my car's engine is a fake engine, a counterfeited engine, duplicate engine. I know that whatever tires I have fitted are not of good quality. I know that the car is not working in a good or proper manner, and there are a lot of maintenance costs which have to be incurred. I approach my friend, I tell my friend that I want to sell my car, are you interested in purchasing it? My friend says that okay, I am ready to purchase it, but how is the condition of the car? Whether it is in good condition or not. I go on telling the friend of mine that yes, it is in a very good condition, the running is good, no maintenance absolutely, the engine is working fine, the tires are working fine. So I know for the fact that whatever I am saying, I am lying, I am not disclosing the truth. But just to sell off my car, I am indulging into such fraudulent practice. Now tomorrow if my friend purchases that car, if he suffers any loss, let's say because of the fraudulent tires or fake tires or the tires which are not in good condition, he meets with an accident, whatever is the cost of his hospitalization or of his recovery, I become liable to indemnify the person, my friend. I become liable to pay him that cost, because it is because of my untruthfulness that he has suffered the damages. So now he gets an option to avoid the contract, means to cancel the contract and return the car to me, or sell off the car and recover the money which he had paid me. So this happens when certain facts are said to the other party with an intention to commit fraud, with an intention to deceive the party. Now when you talk about effect of such consent which has been taken, then in that case the person whose consent has been taken by fraud, the contract becomes avoidable at the option of the party whose consent was so taken. Likewise, whose consent was taken, the person gets a right to rescind it, means to cancel that particular contract, and the principle of restitution is applicable. Principle of restitution means if the person has earned any profit out of it, if the person has earned any sort of profit out of or gain out of that contract, then that contract becomes then that particular gain has to be returned back. This is the meaning of a fraud. Now, another important element for free consent is misrepresentation. Now, this word and fraud are pretty much similar, but one of the main differences between fraud and misrepresentation is that under fraud, the intention of the party is to deceive the other party. The person who is making certain statement knows it to be untrue, knows that whatever I am saying is not correct, but with an objective of obtaining the approval of other party, acceptance of the other party, making that person sign a contract, such untrue statements are made. In case of misrepresentation, those certain statements are made which are not true, but the party making those statements actually believes it to be true. It has got no intention of deceiving the other party, has got no intention of defrauding the party. But the fact is different, but the person's knowledge is altogether different, and the person feels that whatever I am saying is correct. He has got no bad intention, no intention to deceive the other party, and that is what is considered to be misrepresentation. So section 18 of the Indian Contract Act goes on talking about misrepresentation, which says that it is a false statement which is made by a person either willfully or innocently. A false statement made willfully with an intention to deceive the other party is known as fraud, but if the false statement is made innocently or without an intention to deceive the other party, it is called as misrepresentation. The party who is making the statement actually believes it to be true, but the reality is that the statement is completely untrue. Now, according to section 18, misrepresentation will include the following. The first one is a positive assertion or representation of a fact which is not true, though the person making it believes it to be true. Such representation must relate to a matter of fact which has become untrue, and such representation must have been material in influencing the contract. The word material in influencing the contract typically means that anything and everything cannot be considered to be misrepresentation. I'll give you a small example. Let's say I want to purchase a car, let's say Honda car. So I go to the Honda showroom. The minute I enter the Honda showroom, the salesman of Honda will go on showing me multiple cars, right? So the salesman will show me, let's say, one Honda car and will go on telling me all the details about that car, that it will achieve this much average, the windows are this, the color is that, the panel is this, the engine is that, so on and so forth. Tomorrow he goes on making certain statements. Let's say he says that the average which Honda car will give me is 22, whereas he makes another statement saying that the color of this car is a red color. Now, out of these two statements, which is an important statement for me to make a decision that I need to purchase the car, is the engine average. That means my decision to purchase the car will not be dependent upon whether the color of the car is red or whether it is cherry red, but my decision to purchase the car will be dependent upon how much average is the car going to give me. Tomorrow, if it turns out that the car is not giving me 22 average, but the car is giving me only 12 average, that means the person has committed a fraud, because the person salesman knew that the car is not going to give me 22 average, and that is why it will be considered to be fraud. However, the minute he says that the color of the car is red, and according to experts the color of the car is cherry red, it is not going to make much of a difference whether the color of the car is red or it is cherry red. The salesman may not even be knowing the difference between red and cherry red. So the statements which he made are not material facts which will influence my decision to purchase the car or not. And if the statements are not material, it will not make the contract voidable contract. It will only be that the material facts are concerned to this particular consent criteria, and such representation should be without any intention of deceiving the other party. This becomes one of the most important criteria which is distinguishing fraud from misrepresentation, because in case of fraud, like we said, the intention of the party is to defraud the other person. The person knows that whatever I am saying is untrue but still goes ahead and makes the statement. But in case of misrepresentation, the person actually believes it to be true, but the reality is that it is completely untrue. The repercussions or the effects are similar. That means the contract becomes voidable at the option of the party whose contract is obtained, who also gets a right to cancel or rescind the contract. The principle of restitution will be applicable. So in case, let's say in this car example, whatever is the booking amount which I have paid, whatever is the car amount which I have paid, if misrepresentation is proved, I will get my booking amount, car amount as a refund. Likewise, the aggrieved party gets a right to rely upon the misrepresentation as a defense in the suit. Suit means case. So if I want to resign the contract, cancel the contract, I need to approach the court and tell the court that this is what had happened and this is what the other party had misrepresented, and now I want to avoid the contract or cancel the contract. So like any other no free consent, the effects of misrepresentation are also pretty much similar. So till now we have completed 4 important factors, that is coercion, fraud, misrepresentation and undue influence. In our next session, we will look at the last and one of the most important criteria or element of free consent is mistake. That means what is mistake, when a mistake will be considered under the Indian Contract Act, what is the consequence if the consent is obtained by mistake, and what happens in case of unilateral mistake, what happens in case of bilateral mistake, what will happen in case of mistake of fact, what happens in case of mistake of law. So these are the important points. So that is something which we will be discussing in our next lecture. Thank you so much.